we are working on our New Year Healthy Habit series. We're on week 4, and today we're looking at our second pillar of lifestyle medicine, which is physical activity. And today we are going to put some of this into action. We're going to talk about different types of physical activity. I'll give you some inspiration and some ideas for some activity for today, and let's give it a go. So the first thing I want to talk about is target heart rate zones, because you'll hear this a lot when you're looking up different types of activities or different types of workouts, such as cardio, high-intensity interval training, all of the above. You see heart rate kind of pop up a lot. So looking at different target heart rates, so our warm-up zone is going to be defined as like 50 to 60% of our max heart rate. So what is our max heart rate? So our max heart rate, what's typically kind of the equation that we use is you subtract your age in years from the number 220. So say you're 20 years old, it's 200. Say you're 60 years old, it's going to be 160. So that's going to be our max heart rate. So if we're looking at 50 to 60% of our max heart rate, if we're 60 years old and we are looking at a max heart rate of 160, then 50% of our 160 is going to be 80 to 100 is what we're going to be kind of working with. Our fat burning zone, we're going to increase that a little bit to 60 to 70% of our max heart rate. This is kind of moderate intensity, ideal for improving our basic endurance and burning fat over long periods. So if we're going to be working out at 60 to 70% of our max heart rate, we do need to sustain this for a longer period of time in order to see kind of effects from it. Our aerobic zone is 70 to 80% of our max heart rate, and this really improves our cardiovascular fitness and our lung capacity. So at this heart rate, we tend to be a little short of breath. We're breathing pretty heavily, but this is really working out our muscles of respiration and our heart as a pump. Next, we're going to look at our anaerobic zone, so 80 to 90% of our max heart rate. This is high intensity. This is where we're working on speed, power, and athletic performance. So this, typically we kind of reserve this for our high-level athletes. We don't necessarily need to be hitting this on the daily basis, but every once in a while as a little test, it's good to know that our bodies are capable of hitting this anaerobic zone. And then our max effort zone. This is 90 to 100% of our max heart rate. We do not want to sustain this for long periods of time. We want to do this for short bursts of maximum intensity. So this is usually kind of something that we see in our high-intensity interval training type exercises, which I'll talk about next. So this is a type of activity or a type of physical activity kind of program that has been proven to really help with our metabolic rate. So some examples of high-intensity interval training are like 20 seconds on of high intensity activity followed by 10 seconds off, and repeating that times 10 or times 20, however long you want to work out for. So our goal of this high intensity interval training is to hit as close to our max heart rate as possible. So again, kind of that calculation that we're going to use is subtracting our age from 220. So these activities, high intensity interval training workouts, tend to be pretty short, 10 to 30 minutes. We don't need much more than this because we are hitting our peak heart rate really quickly, and we're doing kind of bursts of activity. This often requires no equipment. So some examples of like activities that we may be doing this are burpees or push-ups or like short sprints, kind of like agility exercises, but something where we can get our heart rate up really quickly, and then we don't need to sustain this for very, very long. So one of the kind of proven things about high-intensity interval training is that this actually increases our metabolic rate long after the activity is over. So a couple hours after we've even finished our workout, our body's still processing and still very metabolically active for multiple hours afterwards. So kind of a unique style of training, not everybody's cup of tea, but kind of one of the types of activity that we're looking at today. The next type that we'll look at is cardio. So cardio is anything that elevates your heart rate. and improves your endurance. So examples would be running, cycling, swimming, rowing, dancing, anything where your heart rate is elevated and sustained elevated for a significant period of time. So this enhances our lung capacity and the ability of our heart to pump effectively. It releases endorphins, it reduces stress and anxiety. And kind of our goal for this is 70 to 80% of our max heart rate. So we're not trying to hit our peak, our maximum heart rate like we were in high intensity interval training, but we're trying to sustain kind of a higher level of heart rate for a longer period of time. So in terms of time for this one, we're looking at 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity cardio per week. So we can divide this into smaller chunks, 30 minutes at a time, 20 minutes at a time, a handful times a week for this one. So cardio, running, cycling, swimming, rowing, dancing. Honestly, sometimes if we're really, gung-ho on our house cleaning and chores, we can get to this point, and we can get our cardio in that way as well. So a bunch of different ways we can get cardio workouts in. Even just kind of quick walking, like a brisk walk outside, we can get our heart rate up pretty good. Another example of physical activity is something called weight training. So weight training are exercises that are focused on building muscle strength and endurance. So we're not really thinking about heart rate for this picture. We're more thinking about strength and kind of muscle mass. So examples, usually we have to use equipment for our weight training, but you can do body weight exercises. But some examples would be like dumbbell workouts, bench press, squats, which can be with body weight or with additional weights, and resistance bands. So weight training is really great. We do need to incorporate this kind of for everybody across the board, especially because of its ability to strengthen our bones and reduce our osteoporosis risk. So I was working with a patient the other day in the hospital who was an avid swimmer, and she was in her 70s, and what I considered to be a very fantastic athlete, swimming, four times a week. But her bone density and her bone strength was relatively poor because swimming is not a weight. You're not training against your own body weight. You're just training in the pool where the water resistance is significantly less than that of gravity. So kind of one of the encouraging things for her that we discussed was including weight training, body weight exercises, or adding additional weights to reduce her osteoporosis risk. This also is great for enhancing core strength and bodily alignment and maintaining lean muscle while reducing fat. And then another concept or another aspect of physical activity is flexibility and mobility. So this is huge. A lot of times we think of physical activity as something that just gets our heart rate up or something that just builds our muscles nice and bulky. But flexibility and mobility is a great kind of component or a great additional factor to include when we're talking about physical activity. So stretching, improving range of motion, yoga, Pilates, dynamic stretches. This is really important to reduce our injury risk, our muscle stiffness and injury risk. It's great for our posture. It relieves our muscle tension and promotes relaxation. And this is really an important key factor in functional training. So what is functional training? Functional training allows us to do kind of our day-to-day activities without worrying about injury. So something like bending down to load the dishwasher. Something like, tying our shoes, balancing on one foot and tying our shoes, putting our pants on in the morning. You do have to shift your weight from one leg to the other to do some of these activities, and really flexibility and mobility, kind of more so than any of these other types of physical activity, is really important for maintaining our functional training. So balance, coordination, and strength. So these are just some ideas. So we talked about HIIT, or high intensity interval training, cardio, weight training, and flexibility and mobility. So just some ideas of physical activity that we can incorporate in our day-to-day. So see if you want to give any of those a try. Let me know how it goes, and I'll see you tomorrow where we do some stress management exercises. Have a great day.